I'm WG and let me show you my favorite CHIZURU combo and how it works. Because doesn't everybody want to do this? So yeah, big damage numbers, but how do you get there and everything else in between, as well as some math, but I keep it as easy and as understandable as possible. First, let me give you a rundown of what this CHIZURU looks like. First off, she has 0 ego manifestations whatsoever, so no upgrades there, you don't need those to pull this off. Then memory fragment wise, we have ourselves a 2-piece into a 2-piece, so just 2 standard 2 pieces, and then just pieces with good substats to fill it out. And these substats look the following. We have 889 attack on 57.3% crit chance, with then our 171.9% critical damage, and substat wise we have attack into void into crit chance. So that is our CHIZURU. Potential wise, we have a fully invested unique card upgrade, the 10% crit chance from the critical chance potential, and then a upgrade in the critical damage upgrade with no investment into neutral cards and some investment into basic cards that is irrelevant to this build. And once again, stay away from this unless you really want to play the very specific CHIZURU basic attack build. We'll also revisit that either later today or tomorrow. But now, what exactly did we do without the yapping? Let's have a look. So we have ourselves no godly epiphanies, nothing super crazy, and a faint memory data of 80. So let's quickly look at the gear. So we have the plus 30% damage amount to everything we do, and then we have a by 30% multiplicative when we have 4 or more cards in hand. And as you might have seen with the last blade we used, we did not have 4 cards in hand, so the weapon was kind of not that great for the last boost. So we have ourselves the forbidden card of the forbidden portrait of fury for some card draw, and then we have a Tsukuyomi epiphany that adds 2 hits to the next Shadow of the Moon used, and a Oni Hunt epiphany that not a lot of people talk about, and that is the maximum base damage, like the 216% base damage, but also the plus 60% damage amount to the next bind card used. And as you can see, instead of having 3 Tsukuyomis or even 4 of them, we actually have a 2-2 split. So this is just a 2 copy build. We copied 1 Tsukuyomi from the final boss, and we copied the Oni Hunt from the very first boss. So this build should, in my opinion, actually be pretty attainable. And outside of that, we also hit the decrease the cost of the card with the highest cost by 2, but this could have also been the decrease the cost by 1 for 2 cards, which would have been a bit more useful. But honestly, it doesn't really make too much of a difference, just the fact that it further reduces the cost of a card, just keeping your AP consumption down. So that is ourselves this upgrade, and then there's one epiphany that you can change, and then that is you can find the 4-hitter for the plus 40% damage amount to bind cards, or even just the standard Oni Hunt at 30%. Just keep in mind it won't nearly be as much scaling due to it being either 30 or 40 versus a plus 60% damage bonus. So the game plan for this build is as simple as it gets. First off, we just want to always play our Tsukuyomi card and our Oni Hunt, preferably all 4 of them every single turn. And then we also just apply our Karmic Shackles so that we can start building up on the Shadow of the Moon by generating the stacks, and then working towards upgrading it into the Shadow of the Moon Plus, and then into Bind 3, Bind 4. So that is pretty much the deck, and just for showcase purposes, you absolutely don't have to. We will be running no builds on these units, so it will be a true CHIZURU solo, if that means anything to you, which it shouldn't really. So we will be going in with just CHIZURU. The others also don't have like any combat fragments or whatever. So yes, the only difference you could make is the fact that we get 1 card reduced to 0 cost from the card on our Selena. So here we can just get rid of the Shadow of the Moon and technically even the Bound at Dusk, so that we can then apply the Karmic Flames, get 2 of our stacking cards in, and then use the 3rd. And that's already simplified our turn. As you can see, we also do have 2 AP left over. So the better way you do this is by bringing somebody like a Veronica and then just card cycling. Like, the only thing you need to do is make sure you play every one of your cards every single turn if possible. So for example, right here we'll be using the 2-draw partner to make sure that we can play out all our cards, and we have ourselves the cost reduction on Karmic Flames, which isn't as important, but it can help with AP management in the ability to us pretty much be able to play this card at 0 cost, because it reduces the next card by 1. And then here we use the Oni Hunt, and then Bound at Dusk again goes into our deck. The moment we start getting rid of that Bound at the Dusk, our deck will obviously be slimmer, and we have a higher chance of drawing into what we want. And also the Shadow of the Moon, due to it being a retain card, won't actually come into effect as much anymore. But it is pretty straightforward, it is pretty simple, you can kind of see it right here. Obviously we're going to take a bit of a beating from the boss, but that is absolutely within reason. And then here we just use our double draw to just make sure we get all our cards out. Again, we play out all our other cards. And then, yeah, we'll just go into turn 5, and I'll show you a little bit of the end result, you could say. Obviously, against a boss like this, you have to play this for a couple more turns. But against most enemies in the game that you will realistically face, it's not even that necessary to do this. So we can use our Karmic Flames here. We're also going to be breaking the boss, using both our... I guess we can only use one Oni Hunt, otherwise he kills us. So let me show you how this looks like. We've played out 10 Tsukuyomis, adding up to 20 hits to our next Shadow of the Moon, while also having played out, let me do the math here, 6 Oni Hunts, giving us plus 360%. The important part here about this is these stack permanently. These stack until you use the Shadow of the Moon. So this Shadow of the Moon now has a base of 376 on 23 hits, and that is because it has 3 hits normally, also gets the stacks from the bind stacks, and as you can see, the bind stacks aren't even full. So then we use ourselves our Shadow of the Moon Plus. And then there we go. Obviously the boss is at 600 health, and then we can potentially finish him off here with one last Oni Hunt, right? So the game plan is truly super simple. You just play out your Tsukuyomis, you play out your stacking cards, and you get big damage. Now comes the scary part, a little bit of the math. So bear with me, I'll make it as easy to understand as possible, and what you see here is just a comparison of which amount of copies for Oni Hunt versus Tsukuyomi actually leads to the most amount of damage, so that you know what you would want to copy if you do have the option to pick between them, or kind of what you would want to chase. So let's just start simple with the fact that this is the base damage. So this is the base damage of our Shadow of the Moon, 198% times 3 at bind 5. And then this is what we're going to be adding every single turn, which is, for example, the 2 Onis plus 2 Tsukuyos equals plus 120 versus, and also plus 4 every single turn, meaning that in turn 1 we go up to 318 times 7, or already for a turn 1 hit, this would be a 2226% damage hit. In turn 2 it over doubles, and then that goes all the way further down the line up to a 24,786% on turn 6, and this is what we, something similar, if we were to play out every buff card, is what we did during the very first showcase. And then this is the 2x2 version, so the build you see behind me. Now, keep in mind, just the only thing you need to keep in mind is pretty much this 24,000. For the comparison's sake, it's the easiest. Now we have the 60% versus also adding 6 hits every turn, which is only 3 Tsukuyos. And you can see we are only at 20,646%. So this one is 4,000% higher, or 20% stronger. And then for the final one, we have the 3 Onis and 1 Tsukuyo, meaning plus 180 and plus 2 hits, which, as you see in turn 6, is only at 19,170%, which means it had the least amount of growth, but it is, in comparison to the second build, better scaling should you go past turn 6. So you see we jumped from 14.2 to 19.1, meaning plus 5,000, whereas here we only jumped from 16.4 to 20,600, meaning only plus 6,000. So the best version is the 2-2, then you go with the 1 Oni Hunt, 3 Tsukuyomis, and then the worst one would be 3 Oni Hunts, 1 Tsukuyomi. And now 4 copy comparisons actually go nuts, and that is if you get yourself either 2 Oni copies and a Tsukyo copy, or 1 Oni copy and 2 Tsukyo copies, look at this turn 6 damage. Turn 6 damage for 3 Onis, 2 Tsukyos is going to be 34,506%, whereas for the 2 Onis, 3 Tsukyos also going to be 33,966%, which is absolutely ridiculous, meaning that we are gaining an additional 10,000% damage by turn 6 if we either had the ability to play out an additional Tsukyo or an additional Oni hunt per turn. So this is kind of what you would then at the end of the day end up chasing, a 3 additional copy build split between Oni hunt or Tsukyo, not really making too much of a difference anymore. So now, what kind of things can I think of that could further improve this build? So the best epiphanies that could appear for you on your CHIZURU, in my opinion, would have to be either the 1 draw epiphany on the Tsukuyomi, allowing you to not only add 2 hits at 0 cost, but also draw another card to help you with your deck cycling and help you with cycling into more of her cards, because the 1 AP epiphany doesn't really do anything for you due to the Bounded Dusk already giving you the cost reduction, meaning that the 1 AP doesn't really, it doesn't really help, right? So that's why I think the 1 draw on the Tsukuyomi would probably be for the best, whereas for the Oni hunt, you have a couple more options, but they all will end up pretty much similar, which is either reducing the cost by 1 down to 0, meaning you could play the Oni hunt at 0, making this whole deck even more AP efficient, or you could find again 1 draw ability to just cycle through a deck. You could maybe even find something more damage related, though I don't think they truly help out much here. Maybe something like add 2 vulnerable would stack a bit more vulnerables over time due to the Oni hunts only being 1 hit, but adding 2 vulnerables. And I think that's kind of the the reality of it. And here, obviously, if you get like a cost reduction to 0, you would still get 2 hits, meaning more stack build up without having to pay any cost. Or if you get like a 0 cost epiphany here, that this would make this card AP positive, and you play it for 0, reduce the cost of 1 card of this unit by 1, meaning you are gaining yourself 1 AP without having to worry about any going above AP limits. This is also something you should keep in mind with CHIZURU, and that is any cards that decrease the cost or any shenanigans that decrease the cost are heavily approved and synergize extremely well with being bound away from using any AP shenanigans outside of turn Ravage. So every time you see something along the lines of a cost reductions, you should go, oh wow, this could actually go incredibly well on her. Like, for example, how on a Veronica, if you want to run a Veronica with the CHIZURU, which you can absolutely do, the very best epiphany for her is either obviously the draw 2 at 0, or the draw 2 at 1, which also reduces the cost of one of those cards by 1, which then you could potentially find as like a Divine Epiphany with an extra draw or with the 0 cost. Same is obviously true for the Repose here. But this absolutely does indeed work with her, and also quite reliably. And also something you have to keep in mind is the more 0 card costs, the more ways you have to reduce your costs to 0, the more you can kind of target which cards get hit by the Bounded Dusk. And that's because if all your other cards are 0, it is only going to hit the cards that cost AP. And then, for example, you could even find yourself in a situation where this decrease the cost by 2 is actually supremely effective because you only have 0 cost cards or 2 cost cards. So now, as like a last bit of a showcase, let's just take on a boss that isn't at 9 out of 9 with extra damage reduction and extra discard and extra stuff like that. Once again, it's just kind of CHIZURU doing her own thing. You can obviously supplement that with further damage boost and other units rather easily. So right here we have ourselves the Shadow of the Moon, which we obviously don't need, so we can discard this one. We draw into our perfect, you could say into our dream card right here, Karmic Flames. Get ourselves the double hitter, have ourselves all our boosting cards, make sure we play them turn 1. There we go. And also something that's interesting is you can always just try, especially if you need like more setup for turn 1 through various means, you can just do your AP schemes, your ways to gain AP before you play the Bound of Dusk card at all. So yeah, here we got ourselves our full bonus on our turn 1. So now all of a sudden we can already here get ourselves again a 2-hitter in. And you see we have the Shadow of the Moon fusing into the Shadow of the Moon that we already created, ranking it up by 1. And here we can use the partner skill, just the Hunter partner skill, to draw us 2. Meaning that right here, after just 2 turns, our Shadow of the Moon is already a 485% times 9, meaning you could, for example, do something like this and 2-turn a difficulty 10 boss. So there truly also is some potential there. And if I had to think about maybe something else that could work as a build, what I thought might be possible is playing out, you let me know how much you think this is actually possible in the comments, playing out all your Tsukuyomis and your Oni hunts in 1 turn, so getting the plus 120 and the 4 additional hits, while also making sure you rank up your Shadow of the Moon into the Shadow of the Moon plus, and then play that in the same turn, and then do that for every single turn, meaning that instead of doing 1 big burst on turn 5, you're going to do 1 Shadow of the Moon plus 5 times, which should end up being more damage because you get like the additional damage from the base version. So you're going to get yourself the 3 hits because you have the bound active, and then around like 150% times 2, like 150% times 3, so an additional 450% every single turn.